Now, if you wake up on a Saturday morning and decide, yes, we definitely need another WC cistern and pan, let's pop down to the big shed, there's a few things you might need to think about first. One, can you live without a WC for a few days, because things always go wrong? Secondly, you're going to have to think about the connections. Now, when I talk about connections, what I obviously mean is the incoming supply of water. Can you isolate that? Have you got to get up in the roof or do something to isolate it? And secondly, the 4-inch connector, which connects the WC pan to the outside sewer pipe. These pipes, these incoming pipes are not always sort of standard, and if you've got a WC that's been fitted 50 years ago, it may or may not mate up nicely, so that's something else to think about. Obviously, you're going to have to bail out the existing water in the cistern, that amount of water which won't just flush, and then unscrew the whole lot off the wall, and then ask yourself, is the wall going to be okay, or does the plasterwork need fixing? Just a couple of little things to bear in mind before you start getting the tools out. Here's the isolating valve. So we turn the supply to off, get that in the horizontal position. Now we can flush the toilet, and that should empty the majority of the water out of there. So as you can see, there's still some water in there, so we're going to disassemble this float mechanism so we can get the sponge in there and empty the water out. Right, just quickly see if we can get this undone here using the big old monkey wrench. Shouldn't be on very tight really. And on the other side we have the connection to the overflow. Now that should be the cistern disconnected, so that you should be able to now lift the cistern off its mountings like that. And that just leaves the two big fat screws that hold the pan down into the wooden floorboards. Right, so with those two screws extracted, the whole pan is now ready to come away. It should just pull out of that connector there, which is called a multi-quick. It should just pull forwards and the whole pan should come out. Let's see. And there she goes. And if you don't do that, that's all going to be landing on your stair carpet as you try and haul this thing downstairs. The chances of your new WC pan fitting directly into this existing arrangement of supply, overflow and sewer outlet is reasonably optimistic, I would say, but more than likely this was installed here donkeys years ago, because we've actually got a lead incoming 4-inch pipe. Here's our new pan that we're going to attempt to fit. This is a Roca, ROCA, and we're hoping that when we shove it into position, it's actually going to fit. Now it has a couple of chances. Obviously it can either fit or it doesn't fit. We'll see. Wow, that is pretty close. Now, the outlet on the pan is pretty well parallel to the floor, I would say, but the incoming lead pipe from outside is at an angle. There is a angled multi-quick available. I think it might be 14 degrees, and I think it might be nice to have one of those and see if we can make that work. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that when the cistern's on here, we may be closer or further back from the wall, in which case we may need to shorten that lead pipe, which will, of course, mean the outlet, the connector I should say, will be lower, if you follow what I'm saying here. So we need to get the cistern and just sit it on here and see where it falls against the actual plasterwork. Now, right, that's the cistern just standing on there, just doubly checking to make sure it actually lines up. So I rest my case. You can see we've got here about 125 millimeters to the wall. So when the pan gets pushed back 125 mil, we're going to be back down to where my finger is somewhere, and then that is going to make the outlet of the pan significantly higher than this inlet, sorry, I should say the lead pipe that goes out to the stack. So we're going to need to think about this. Now what I'm going to do next is shorten this lead soil pipe to get it roughly to the approximate length that it needs to be to accommodate that spigot or outlet pipe on the WC. So we're going to see if we can cut through the lead using an old handsaw, and that was straightforward enough. Disappointingly, I'm not sure that we are ever going to get this to marry up nicely here. The angle of the lead pipe coming in through from outside is such that, well, basically it's too low. The lead pipe coming in is, what's that, 25 mil lower than the outlet of the new WC. When I discovered that the soil pipe and the pan were not going to connect up nicely, okay, there are available offset connectors, bendy connectors from McAlpine, which may do. You could possibly work something in that way. When I discovered that, I decided, right, we're going to sacrifice the lead pipe, which meant getting up on the outside of the building and pulling that lead pipe out. Now you'll be able to see that little job in another video, the replacing of the cast iron soil stack. But that was the reason why we chose to connect our new WC pan to the black plastic modern pipe. Now maybe we can see what we're doing. Now we're going to bring the WC in and actually see where our hole really wants to be. I think it's going to be just to the north of the existing hole. In the old days, the connectors were known as multi-quicks, and this is a MKS1 multi-quick straight one, I guess. Nowadays they seem to have been superseded by McAlpine products, who have a fantastic reputation in the building trade, plumbing, and this one is known as a connector one, which is the basic straight pan connector. Okay, so now we can try this to the wall and see what happens and see where we are. Okay, so we've now hit the outside course of bricks, so we're going to have to just make a fine adjustment to the outer brickwork, I think. Right, we'll see if we can quickly fit this McAlpine connector, just giving it a little taste of silicone spray. If we just ease this into here. About right. Feels okay. So that's in there. There's a little bit of play on this pipe, which may come in handy in a minute. Yeah, that's that. Nicely fitted. Okay. I believe that I put some marks on the outlet pipe. I believe that is the position of our pan there. Right, we've drawn the line on that bit of masking tape. So you actually need two lines. One is the side of the pan and the other is to indicate where the actual hole is. Same on both sides, obviously. So you can see the pan, the edge of the pan is marked, but also the hole is also marked. What we're going to do now is we want to end up with this, it'll be that way round. So we're going to now penetrate our new vinyl in the correct place and drill this thing into the floorboards basically. Right, that's both of these studs into the floor, 35mm centres of the hole. I think these little plastic jobbies go over there now. And as far as I understand, we put the pan back on here and these holes will line up perfectly with the side of the pan to fix our bolts through. We shall see in a second. Obviously you have to be able to lift the pan over those studs. Now, according to everything that we measured and tested, that should be the exact place, and when we look through here we should be able to use this bolt and its little nylon collet thing, and that should go through and go straight into our okay, did that work? No. Well guys, as you know, we don't do rehearsals here. I think some of those measurements are to do with a different pan. in all fairness, I would have thought that stud wanted to be a lot closer to this china ware. Because I can feel that stud, and obviously it's whatever it was, 45 millimeters away. So that's a fail, isn't it, guys? So we're going to pull the pan out and have a look and see what the problem is. So this is the pan on its head at the minute. As anybody with half an eye can see, the thickness of this material here is, yeah, around about 12 or 13 millimeters. So I would have thought that those studs should be 12 or 13 millimeters, so they're just on the inside of this pan, so that when we stick this bolt through, it's just going to be perfect. Don't you love these instructions, honestly? If you can make any sense out of that, just let me know in the comments below. According to my calculations, the outside of the pan is going to finish like that, and that bolt will finish there. So I'm going to put the little pyramid thing on about 3 or 4 mil back from the edge of the inside of the pan, just to allow for the curvature of the pan. And we're basically just doing this by guesswork, because the instructions are next to useless. Take 2. Oops. Ooh. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if she's going to have that. Feels like we might end up breaking something here if we're not careful. Let's just take those off. I've just got it a bit too tight, haven't I? I've moved the studs again. Thank goodness we're not drilling into concrete, because this would be a hideous experience. Now, the point is, we're doing this by finding out. If I was fitting WC pans every day of the week for a living, we wouldn't have this problem, obviously. It feels as if we're doing this like a car with loose steering, where you're swerving from one side to the other just to go straight. And the point is that that nylon pyramid on the inside should be nice and flush to the inner surface, so that it makes a tight fitting. Well, at least we stand a chance now. I don't know if that's threading up or not. It feels as if it is. I'll just offer the other one in the other side, just so that we can see where we are. Let's just have a look. Okay, that one well, you can see we're having a bit more success. I'll turn the camera off while I fiddle with the other side. I will show you what I'm going to do, and no doubt the professional plumbers are going to be grinding their teeth. I've slackened off the 2 fixing bolts. I'm just going to lift the pan a little bit, and just enough to get the pencil under there. And then I'm going to put the smallest amount of silicone just under the front edge here, so that when the pan sits back down, it just squishes onto a small amount of silicone, which will, when that goes off, that will just help hold the front of the pan down. I'm not going all the way round, I'm just doing a little bit here at the front, and then I'm going to let that just squish down. Next thing we're going to do is have a go at fitting the cistern. Now, the instructions, which I've discovered are pretty useless, give 3 different methods of fixing your cistern down: A, B, C. Now we're not A, we're not B, which shows how to screw the thing into the pan. So I'm guessing we must be C. So if we have a look in the kit that comes, that's your filler, that's the kind of dump valve, that is the flushing button. Let's see what else we've got. And this thing is the donut, or the sort of sealing washer, and the nuts and bolts for fixing the cistern down to the pan. In the cistern you'll see there's a whole bunch of holes here. The 2 larger ones to the outsides are for filling the filler using that gizmo there. And the 2 smaller holes are for fixing the cistern down to the pan, and obviously the big hole is where the water flushes down through into your WC. So if we just remove the back nut off here, remembering the sequence, that squishy rubber washer will go down onto the pan, will go down onto the cistern. I'm just turning it over from the other side, and then you're just going to put that on there, and that lovely brass fitting on there. Now I'm just doing this temporarily because I want to be able to offer this up and just see if our filling pipe, our supply pipe, is going to work out okay. So that will all go something like that. Now what I want to do now is just offer this onto the actual pan, so we can see how difficult it's going to be to connect the supply up. We could put a flex in that flexible hose like that, which is kind of doesn't feel that comfortable to me. There's quite a bit of pressure on that. So I'm not sure if that's going to be acceptable to do that. Let me know in your comments what you think. Is that okay to have a kink in your hose like that? The alternative, of course, is to do it with straightforward copper. So let's just have a look. I'm not saying this is the way we're going to go, but this is the old-fashioned way. And it may well be that it's going to be quite straightforward to fit that copper into there. Job done. And straight out of the packaging, we're very fortunate that the sequence of a metal washer, rubber washer, another metal washer, a nut, another washer and another metal washer, and our wing nut, they're in the actual sequence that you're going to need to fit them to the cistern. So, working from the top, that's the way that it's going to go in. So this should just go straight through the cistern and form a watertight seal. The other point is, with some of the cheap cisterns, the bottom, the inside of the cistern is not exactly flat because they're made on the cheap. Luckily with the Roca, it is dead flat. And this is where you find people lashing the thing up with, gunking it up with silicone, because of the uneven surface on the inside of the cistern. Just pass that through the hole, and then a rubber, are you seeing this? The rubber washer first, the metal washer, then the nuts. Using your tool, spanner, whatever, tighten that up, but not over tightened. Obviously then when you're happy that that's tight enough, this part here is going to pass through the actual pan, and then we're going to use this sequence here to fix from underneath the pan, and that will go on like that. Next, I'm going to fit this bung, which we will put on the left hand side here. Also, no silicone. It's very tempting, I must say, to just peel this back, lash a load of silicone on it, and lash a load more silicone around that surface. But, you know, it's not recommended, so we won't do that. We're going to fit this thing now, so make sure the nice rubber dome washer is on there. Offer it through the hole using your best efforts that you can. There she blows. And then put the plastic washer on first. This is lovely having brassware here. The cheap nasty ones are made of plastic and they're absolute rubbish. And what we're doing as we tighten this is we're squishing that that rubber washer down on the inside of the cistern, forcing it down into the hole so that it makes a watertight seal. My feeling is that is tight enough. I just don't want to overdo it and crack something. The next thing we're going to do is see if we can fit this, it's commonly known as a dump valve. Now I believe this thing actually comes apart by twisting. That just separates, which I'm not quite sure why that is, but there's a back nut and a washer, and the rubber washer makes this watertight seal on the inside. So there's nothing to do except just push this thing, make sure the rubber seals up nice and tight, and then just fit it inside. Now, personally, I would try and always get that middle for diddle. Right, on the instructions for fitting this thing, there's a picture that is supposed to represent somebody's arm, I think. I don't know what that means, whether you have to have big muscles to do this job or whether you just use hand muscle, you know, your own hand tightness. So as you can see, that just misses the bolt. Now with those items fitted, we can now put the cistern on top of the pan. Now we can tighten the cistern down onto the pan using those wing nuts that we saw earlier, and then see about getting some screws into the slots at the back of the cistern. I'm just going to put the back nut on temporarily and tighten it down so that we can get a clue where the cistern is going to sit in its finished position, so we can drill the holes in the right place to fix it to the wall. Just for full disclosure, when I tested the position of this cistern on with the pan, dry as you might say, before we fixed the pan down, I felt certain I had got this spot on. Now what do I find? There's a 10mm gap, but I'm tempted to just put some rubber plugs behind there. So anyway, it's not the end of the world. It goes without saying you want the right length screws for this, and also screws which are stainless steel or old-fashioned brass. All I've got here is the brass screws that came out of the old cistern. So not quite long enough, but we're going to use them, and because I'm not keen on just screwing metal straight onto the chinaware, onto that clay, I've quickly made some lead washers with a bit of lead that was lying about outside. Just put in a little bit of Boss White on the olive, and the fibre washer also gets a little bit of Boss White just to assist that. Obviously this end is going to go up, this end is going to go up under the cistern, and this end is going to go into the isolating valve. So that'll go up under there. And then this end will go into that isolating valve. Luckily the pipe coming out of the floorboards has got sufficient slack on it to be able to squeeze this copper pipe in. Now they just both want tightening up properly now. Now the push button flushing device just goes on very unscientifically. We just use a backing nut. You're not going to have that problem of how do you get this thing out when you want to do any work, because this one you just lift the whole lid straight off. Now comes the interesting bit. We've tightened all our nuts up at the top, connections. Everything inside the cistern has been tightened down. as per the instructions, no silicone whatsoever. And eventually the moment comes when we have to turn the juice on. Make sure you've got plenty of towels handy. Just let a little bit of water through steadily first. Well, I suppose this will be the first flush of youth, will it? Looks like we have a tiny bit of dripping here. Not unexpected, to be honest, so we will investigate and see what's happening. Surprise, surprise. It's the bung, isn't it, that's dripping. Now this is the plug, the bung that goes in the spare hole in the bottom of the cistern. And in my opinion, this is not real rubber, this is Chinese flipping rubber. More like some other thing, neoprene or something. If that was real squishy rubber, that would form a watertight seal. Now I'm going to give it one more go. It would be easy to resort to the silicone here, but we're going to give it one more go and see if we can do this job with no silicone whatsoever. Right, second time round. I always place a few bits of toilet paper on the floor there, and that will quickly reveal any drips. Not happy. Now, we've got two options. One is we can put this big spanner on there and really whack that up tight, or we take the thing out again and resort to silicone. Right, well, we've got a limited amount of time to mess around with this thing. I didn't want to do it like this, but out comes the silicone. I'm going to give it a light squeege around here. We've tried, we've done our best. We'll put the rubber washer on top of that and make a nice sandwich there. And we will also apply some more silicone to the so-called rubber washer. And when we that's gunked up, and when I push that down through the hole in the cistern, we put the back nut on, that will never leak. Just put in a little bit of Boss White on the olive, and the fibre washer also gets a little bit of Boss White just to assist that. Obviously this end is going to go up. This end is going to go up under the cistern, and this end is going to go into the isolating valve. So that'll go up under there, and then this end will go into that isolating valve. Luckily the pipe coming out of the floorboards has got sufficient slack on it to be able to squeeze this copper pipe in. Now they just both want tightening up properly now. Now the push button flushing device just goes on very unscientifically. We just use a backing nut. You're not going to have that problem of how do you get this thing out when you want to do any work, because this one you just lift the whole lid straight off. Now comes the interesting bit. We've tightened all our nuts up at the top, connections. Everything inside the cistern has been tightened down as per the instructions, no silicone whatsoever. And eventually the moment comes when we have to turn the juice on. Make sure you've got plenty of towels handy. Just let a little bit of water through steadily first. Well, I suppose this will be the first flush of youth, will it? Looks like we have a tiny bit of dripping here. Not unexpected, to be honest, so we will investigate and see what's happening. Surprise, surprise. It's the bung, isn't it, that's dripping. Now this is the plug, the bung that goes in the spare hole in the bottom of the cistern. And in my opinion, this is not real rubber. This is Chinese flipping rubber. More like some other thing, neoprene or something. If that was real squishy rubber, that would form a watertight seal. Now I'm going to give it one more go. It would be easy to resort to the silicone here, but we're going to give it one more go and see if we can do this job with no silicone whatsoever. Right, second time round. I always place a few bits of toilet paper on the floor there, and that will quickly reveal any drips. Not happy. Now, we've got two options. One is we can put this big spanner on there and really whack that up tight, or we take the thing out again and resort to silicone. Right, well, we've got a limited amount of time to mess around with this thing. I didn't want to do it like this, but out comes the silicone. I'm going to give it a light squidge around here. We've tried, we've done our best. We'll put the rubber washer on top of that and make a nice sandwich there. And we will also apply some more silicone to the so-called rubber washer. And when we that's gunked up, and when I push that down through the hole in the cistern, we put the back nut on, that will never leak. Now these are the fittings for the seat. If you can understand those instructions, well, good luck with that. I think we'll just use our initiative here. This clear plastic stuff is the same shape as the top half of the fitting, which I guess would go like that, and these toggle bolts will go underneath the pan. So let's just give it a shot. I fitted that thin plastic stuff on the back, and I guess this is supposed to go down through. if I could arrange myself like that, something like that, I guess. Both do the same both sides, and then we'll figure out the gap between the holes in the toilet lid, and then this is adjustable. Right, well, that has taken about 25 minutes, quite a straightforward operation. You can see I've marked the pan there a few times. I think we've eventually got it right. And then you just whack these discs on, click them down. I'll clean those marks off before I do that, I think. All done and good to go. Touchdown. Right, that's all sound now, watertight and all good to go and finished. It was our DIY attempt to fit a Roca pan and cistern. Hope you found that moderately interesting. Yes, it took a little bit longer than expected. We don't do rehearsals, so you've seen things going wrong. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that would be good, thank you, and you'll be able to see what else we get up to around the house, around the car, and even a few photography tips.